We are Cory and Wallace, an early retired couple on a full-time journey around the world. With a passion for exploring new cultures, discovering hidden gems, and enjoying delicious local food, we are on a mission to experience as much of the world as we can.
Welcome back. I'm Wallace.
And I'm Cory.
And if you're new here, we have been traveling the world full-time for 1 full year as of today. In that year, we've been to 10 countries, we've visited 44 cities, we've taken 27 flights, we've stayed in 14 Airbnbs and 21 different hotels, and we have flown and traveled a total distance of 47,567 kilometers, or 29,556 miles. And to put that into perspective, the total circumference of the Earth at the equator is 40,075 kilometers, or 24,901 miles. So we've done a fair bit of traveling.
And learned a lot along the way. And today we're going to talk about our experiences and our lessons and everything else in between.
It's been a crazy whirlwind of a year. I honestly can't believe it's already been a full year since we left Canada on October 7th, 2024.
I know. So I think the best way to do this is by asking a list of questions. So we came up with a list of questions and we're just going to kind of go through them.
So I guess let's start with number one. What were your top 3 destinations and what did you like about them?
Ooh, these are tough. My top 3 destinations, Thailand for sure. I'm in love with Thailand. I always have been. The culture is amazing. The people are amazing. The food is just incredible, and it's just a really that's our happy place. I think we decided Southeast Asia in general is our happy place, but Thailand is definitely. Oman was definitely up there. We didn't spend a lot of time in Oman because it was really expensive, but the short time that we did stay there, so we stayed there for 5 days, we ended up falling in love with it. The people are incredibly kind. The landscape is unlike anything that you'll experience elsewhere, and it has a lot to offer. We went in the summertime, so we weren't able to experience as much as we were possibly able to experience in the wintertime, because the locals kept saying come back in the winter, it's a lot cooler. So we do plan to go back in the winter and maybe take advantage of maybe going out to the desert or something. And I would say Turkey, we both ended up falling in love with it. Once we got out of Istanbul, again, the landscape is incredible. The history is insane there. And I think for me, the way that they treat their animals was above and beyond, especially the strays. They're all taken care of, even government funded. They're spayed, they're neutered, they're well taken care of, there's food, there's water, and that says a lot about a country. So, same question to you. What are your top 3 countries and why?
And the funny thing is, my top 3 are exactly the same as Cory's, and we didn't, pre-plan these answers, so I didn't know what she was going to say. Thailand, I think, is Thailand's our happy place. We've been twice now, and we love it there. The Thai people are so friendly and welcoming. The weather's fantastic. The beaches are amazing. The food, oh my goodness, the food is probably some of the best in the world. That's pretty much it. I think there was one place that we would for sure go back to, or only one place that we could go back to, it would be Thailand. Oman, again, we were in Muscat, Oman it was 8 days that we were there. only a short visit right smack in the middle of summer, and it was beautiful. The people were so welcoming. The culture there is just so vastly different than anything we've experienced before, and such a beautiful, beautiful country. Oh my goodness. Um, like Cory said, the locals, you know, encouraged us to go back and visit again in the winter, and I absolutely understand why. And I think that is something that we are going to aim to do, try to plan around that and go through again in the winter when the weather is more temperate and more manageable, because I would definitely like to see more of Oman. And Turkey, yeah, I mean, what can you say about Turkey? We had a rough start, you know, there was some challenges there, but we absolutely fell in love with the place. The people are fantastic. The um, food is great. The history and the culture, like, my goodness, the amount of history in that country is just mind-boggling. And there's just such care for the stray animals, like Cory already talked about, which is unlike pretty much anywhere we've ever seen. I mean, no, I shouldn't say that. We've been to places where people care about animals, obviously, but just the general, you know, across the board, you know, on a community level or a country level where everyone is like that is very, very refreshing to see. So that definitely made it one of our top places. And again, definitely a place I would like to return to and stay longer next time if we can. So yeah, I think that pretty much is it. I think it says a lot that our top three are identical.
So, next question. How did we choose the destinations that we visited?
Honestly, mostly budget. The way we've early retired, we're living off the proceeds of our investment portfolio, and with that, there is some risk. Basically, it's called sequence of returns risk, and within the first few years of our retirement, you know, if all of a sudden the markets take a big nosedive, we could potentially run into problems and it's not going to be sustainable. How we work around that is for these first few years, we're choosing places that are a little bit more economical for us to visit, so that we don't, you know, stretch our budget too much, and we basically leave ourselves a bit of buffer to make sure that we're okay. And after those first few years, as our portfolio continues to grow, won't be a problem. So ultimately, that's how we picked most of the places on our list.
Since Southeast Asia was already our happy place, we knew that we would be happy there. It wasn't a stretch for us to spend, what was it, like 8 or 9 months there?
8 months there, yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't like, oh God, we have to stay in this area. It was, we get to explore more. So it wasn't sad for us.
And the great thing is, because it's so affordable, we were able to live very comfortable lives. We were able to rent nice, you know, for the most part, nice Airbnbs, eat good food, go out, you know, eat at restaurants. And in that process, we still spent less money per month than what we would have spent living back home in Canada. And to me, that's still kind of crazy, but there you have it. That is one of the realities of traveling full time. You do it right, you can live very, very well for not a lot of money.
So the next question, what has been the biggest challenge that we've encountered so far? And I think our answers are going to be very different.
For me, the biggest challenges have been with regards to the logistics, the travel planning. That's taken more time than I expected it would. So, you know, besides just thinking, okay, hey, which countries can we afford to go to? There's a lot of time spent in the background for me, researching, you know, the cheapest flights, how to get the best deals, you know, whether that's cash fares for flights or doing a deeper dive and using miles and points. You know, for us, it's Aeroplan, and trying to find, you know, really great deals so that we can fly business class, for example, on some of the longer hauls, which those flights are hard to come by. So there's a lot of background work spent with that kind of thing. Looking through hundreds of Airbnb listings for each location we're going to find something that would be both suitable for us as well as that fits our budget. because unfortunately with Cory's celiac disease, we do require a place that has a kitchen so that we can do most of our own cooking. And so when you plug in all these different filters, it does make things a little bit more difficult to find. But I think so far, we've had one or two hiccups, but we've done pretty good with that.
Yeah, and he's very logistical, so I leave a lot of that to him. That's like his strength. So for me, my biggest challenge is food. Not gonna lie, it's hard. I think when most people think about traveling the world, they're like, oh, why would you even cook for yourself? There's a lot of reasons to it. It can be budget, but for me, it's safety, just so that I don't get sick along the way. I have been very fortunate and have yet to be very, very sick on this travel. So we have proven that this is sustainable and that we can do it. It just requires a lot more work, especially when you get to an Airbnb for the first couple days. You have to scope out the kitchen. Hopefully the host is really nice and gets us like extra cooking-ware and stuff. So far we haven't had any problems with that, and just trying to figure out what food you can eat in the grocery store. So we have learned to keep our expectations low. And what we buy from the grocery store does not even come close to what we would normally buy if we had, say, our house and like a full pantry and stuff. So we've learned to really minimize our meals, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Part of that is, we're in a new place. We're only here for a week, 2 weeks, a month, what have you. So we don't have a fully stocked kitchen pantry to make use of. So yeah, we do have to keep things pretty simple with the bulk of our meals. Could we go more elaborate, go bigger? Sure, but then we're going to incur extra cost, having to buy all different spices and, and different ingredients that we're only going to use for 1 or 2 meals, rather than, we just stick to the basics so that we don't have too much food waste, and we time it so that, we don't buy more than we need for the duration that we're going to be in a place. So far, we've done pretty good with that, but yeah, it ends up being a bit of a challenge, especially that first, day or two when we hit a new city. And okay, we figure out where our Airbnb is. I try to book us places that I can find on a map, have grocery stores nearby, but even then you don't know what those grocery stores will have in stock. They're, some of them are better than others. Some of them have been amazing. Some of them have been pretty minimal, and so you kind of have to just work with what you've got.
I'm laughing because Indonesia comes to mind. Grocery stores just don't really exist there, which it blows my mind. We were staying in Kuta. We were staying in a hotel, so we couldn't cook, but we are like, oh, we can just buy like carrots and stuff at a grocery store. Yeah, that proved to be hard, and I think it was Sihanoukville in Cambodia. What was on the map as a grocery market
store
was a corner store at best, and it didn't have any fresh vegetables. It took us a while to find the actual grocery store. So, yeah, that was a huge learning experience for both of us.
Yeah, I remember that day in Sihanoukville. We were taking taxi, like a Grab or whatever. I can't remember which app we were using, but we were taking a taxi around to the grocery store, or to find a grocery store, and it took 3 attempts before we actually found a proper grocery store that sold fresh food. So that was, days like that can definitely be challenging. So that's one of the biggest ones for us.
So the next question, how did we do for the budget throughout this year? And this is a question more for him. He kind of manages all that.
We did pretty good. We were more or less on track with the amount of spend that we had anticipated for the year. Now, we did spend a fair bit of money in those 5 days in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's not a cheap city, and we did not hold back. But that's because we had some money set aside for that, so that was kind of a one-off. We don't normally go out and spend $200 on dinner on a regular basis like we did 5 days in a row there. But beyond that, it's no different than when you're at home, at least for me. We track all of our spending on a spreadsheet in Excel. Basically, everything, every cent that we spend gets tracked, and we've set up our finances so that we know how much money we've got set aside for the year. I break it down per month. Once you subtract your fixed costs, you know how much you have left to play with, and that's worked pretty well for us. We've had a couple of months where we've spent a little bit more, a couple of months where we spent a little bit less, but overall, I think we've done pretty well. And again, traveling to some of the countries we've traveled to makes that easier because we know, hey, we're going to go to Vietnam and stay there for, what was it, 35 days in Da Nang, because we know that the cost of living will be cheap there and we can save a little bit of money, because then we're going to go spend some time, we spent 8 days in Oman right after, where we knew things would cost a bit more, so that kind of balances itself out. The next thing, I guess, is what cultural differences surprised you the most?
The way that the poor are perceived in Asian countries. In Canada, the poor are really helped out by the government and stuff, and there's always these programs to help the poor. Unfortunately, in Asia, that is not the case. A lot of them are left to their own devices, and that's just the way it is. So there's a lot of begging. There is a lot of sad scenarios that you're going to see. But as somebody told us, a very wise traveler told us, it's not our responsibility to fix a broken social system. So as hard as it is, like, you can't help everybody, and it's not that we're turning a blind eye, but we don't do handouts to people that are begging, because again, it wouldn't fix anything.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. There's definitely a lack of, I guess, social welfare programs in a lot of these countries, at least, or maybe not, lack is not the right word, but they're not as well funded as what we're used to seeing in Canada. So yeah, there are a lot more, elderly people out begging on the streets because they're, retired but have no social security benefits, no pensions, no other income, and it is hard to see. I agree. It's tough. It's hard to turn a blind eye to that, but like Cory said, it's not something that we can necessarily fix. So even if we start giving handouts everywhere we go, that doesn't solve anything. And yeah, it's tough, absolutely. So I think for me, the biggest surprise was at first in Oman, just really being immersed in Muslim culture, which we've never been anywhere like that before. Everyone was so welcoming, so friendly, so open. Um, and, it's, I don't know, it's weird because, of course, in Western media, you've got this really negative perception of Islam, with all the world events and terrorism and all this other, crap that's happening out there. But to be in that culture and to be interacting with the people, it's such a peaceful culture and religion. It's unfortunate that it's been so, I guess, corrupted by certain segments of society. But yeah, absolutely. Like, we felt so welcome there. It was just such a great environment, and really one of the main reasons why we would love to go back to Oman.
Yeah, even for me being a woman, a female, I was not anticipating that. I was anticipating not so much kindness from the males, to be honest. And with the exception of maybe one or two incidences, I would say that overall, I had a very, very welcoming atmosphere. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And all the women, honestly, I wasn't wearing everything that they were wearing. Nobody blinked. Nobody cared. everybody was just smiling and really happy and like very helpful to us. So yeah, it's not as big a deal as you think it is.
How was it adapting to different languages and customs?
Actually, really easy. Um, uh, I don't think we really had to do much. It wasn't a stretch at all. To Nothing we really had to worry about. As far as like language, yes, there's a barrier there, but Google Translate goes a long, long way.
Yes.
Smiling and just being super friendly, and I'm terrible at language, so even like learning like hi, thank you, please, like those simple terms can be very difficult in some languages. So I'm not as capable as Wallace, but I just smile and try my best, and I've had no problems.
Yeah, agreed. Google Translate certainly makes things easier, but never underestimate the power of a smile and just making that effort. Even something as simple as learning like just very basic phrases, you know, please, thank you, hello, and just that one word in their language, even though you can't say anything else, it really does go a long way. Shows that you're at least putting some effort into trying to understand and respect their culture and customs, and that really is all it takes there. Most people are generally very understanding. They know you're a tourist. They're not going to expect you to be able to speak their language perfectly or at all. And I didn't really find that we had too much difficulty. And whenever we did run into a problem, Google Translate was usually good enough to work through any miscommunications. Um, and it's great that you can even use it offline if you have to. So that was really quite helpful. The other thing is just as long as you're respectful of local culture, especially when you're around religious sites. So if the rules say you've got to wear pants that cover up below your knees or no bare shoulders. That's more usually for women, but there's been places we've gone that even I had to cover up a little bit, no shoulders. I mean, not a problem for me. I usually just wear t-shirts, but not able to wear shorts in those days. So be it. You're in their country after all, and those are their customs. And as long as you respect that, I don't think there's usually going to be any problems with that.
So, what has been the most memorable interaction that we've had with locals?
Oh, that's a great question. There's been a lot of really cool interactions. We've had a lot of, conversations with locals, and not even just with locals, but with other people, other travelers as we've gone along. But the most memorable for me is when we were in Kuta, Bali, Indonesia, and there was a lady there that went around every day feeding the packs of stray dogs. We knew about her because I can't remember where we first heard about her. Whether it was another YouTube video or
no, it was one of the dogs I was trying to get help for. She had mentioned that there was a lady.
Right. Yeah. Cory had messaged one of the animal rescue groups, and they basically told her there was a lady going around that helped feed the dogs. So whatever. We were going around with bags of dry dog food that we got at the local grocery store, and whenever we saw a stray, we try to leave a little pile of food. Anyways, one night we were walking to dinner and we came across this lady on her motorbike feeding a pack of dogs, and she had basically a little bin strapped to the back of her motorbike that had dog food in it, like dry kibble, meat, rice. We were chatting with her a little bit, and it turns out she basically was retired. Her husband had passed away, and basically she spent her time collecting recyclable pop cans, and bottles and things like that, returning those for the deposit, and using that money to feed stray dogs. And that was such a great,
Yeah.
interaction with her. We gave her what little cash we had on us, just to go towards buying dog food. Gave her the rest of the bag of dried kibble we had with us that day. And she was so grateful. She was crying, Cory was crying. It was just a lovely, lovely interaction.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the top ones. For me, man, this is hard. Probably the time that we volunteered in Malaysia. We were volunteering for a animal rescue. Happened to be dogs and cats. We'd reached out. We originally just wanted to go out and help, at the facility, but we couldn't figure out a way to get there and back safely because it was really out of the way, and we could get there, but getting back by Grab was probably going to be a challenge, and it was not a challenge we were willing to take on. So she invited us to come at an event at the mall, and so that we could help out. And I had no idea what we were getting into. And she really wanted us to talk to the locals about adoption, and that kind of caught me off guard because I thought we were just gonna help take care of the animals, which we ended up doing. But she was just such a lovely lady.
Yeah, that was a really cool day. We ended up spending that entire, I think it was a Saturday, at a shopping mall in Kuala Lumpur, helping out at an adoption drive it was Second Chance Animal Shelter. And we basically got to play with puppies and kittens all day and talk to people who were coming out, just to talk about the animals, talk about, adoption in general. And that was just really, really cool.
It was. It highlighted how much it's needed in every culture, which is hard. But it was nice to see that one person was making a big difference in a very, very small way in Kuala Lumpur, because there's a big problem there with stray animals.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think our next section we want to talk about is to do with travel logistics. What kind of accommodations do we usually stay in? So what do you prefer and why?
I think I personally prefer the apart hotels. So they're more or less like an Airbnb, but they're more run like a hotel. So you get the experience of having a kitchen, you get a little bit more room, but you get almost weekly, sometimes daily cleaning from a staff member. So that's really nice. And they're a little bit more willing to go out of their way to get you what you need. Like if you're cooking in the kitchen and you need something, you can reach out and get that item a little bit easier than an Airbnb.
You mean like equipment, cookware, not like ingredients, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that's probably my ideal situation.
Yeah. Okay. So those are, like Corey said, they're called apart hotels, or sometimes serviced apartments. And yeah, we've booked most of those through either Booking.com or Airbnb. And yeah, definitely that style of accommodation I definitely like better. They've been a lot nicer than the small, little individual independent Airbnb units generally. Like the place in Kuala Lumpur was fantastic. There was a nice rooftop pool, really nice gym. Generally, they're in better overall condition. And yeah, no, definitely, I think that's not a bad way to go. Me personally, I like the hotels. Not a big surprise.
It's not that I don't like hotels. Hotels do have their place, and I do enjoy them. I enjoy the comfort. My biggest struggle is the food. Yep. So not being able to cook for myself kind of puts myself at a little bit of risk every time. once I get to know the hotel and once I get to know the staff, it's not usually so big a deal, and I can usually get what I want and what I need. But those first few days can be a bit of a challenge.
That's fair. I don't have those same challenges, so it's a little bit easier for me. What I've loved is that because we've been working with um, working on getting elite status with Marriott Bonvoy, we hit titanium status pretty early on in the year, and having that status basically almost every time we've stayed in a Marriott branded hotel, we've gotten an upgrade, usually to a suite. Uh, usually that benefit also gets us free breakfast in the hotel's buffet breakfast or whatever they've got on offer. Lounge access for drinks and snacks or even dinner basically in the evenings, and just a lot of comfort overall. And the way we've done it, we've also managed to leverage our free night awards that we get from our Amex Marriott Bonvoy credit cards, and we've gotten some really amazing 5-star hotels for free, which has been really cool and definitely a luxury that we wouldn't generally be able to afford otherwise. So to be able to get that level of comfort and quality with basically spending no money is pretty freaking awesome.
Yes, it is. Not going to deny that.
And next bit, as far as travel logistics, is how do we handle transportation between our destinations? Do you want to take that one?
Are we talking like from country to country, or are we talking like from within the country?
I guess both.
Okay, so from country to country, it is usually a toss up. So there's a lot of options. Like if you're going from Thailand to Cambodia to Vietnam, we could go by airplane, we could go by bus, we could go by train. What we look at is what are the departure times and how long is the trip. And we do a lot of research. Do not downplay the amount of research that you have to do when you're doing this kind of stuff. Um, yeah, the trains, they always sound great in theory until you look at online reviews, or if you're watching a video and you're like, that just does not look very comfortable and it's a long trip. And one of the backpacker hacks is to book a bus or a train overnight so you don't have to like spend money on accommodation for that night. The downfalls can be that there's no AC, that it's extremely uncomfortable, that there's no life at bed. The list goes on. I mean, I could be here all day. Or which usually we end up flying. So after all that research, we debate over cost, over what our comfort level is with that. And we usually end up flying because of the convenience. Not gonna lie, it is more convenient.
Yeah. So could we be doing this traveling around the world a little bit cheaper? Yes, absolutely. There's been lots of times we could have taken an overnight bus or a train and saved hundreds of dollars on the travel. At the end of the day, we're in our mid to late 40s. Getting too old for that kind of discomfort, honestly. To spend 8 to 12 hours on a bus that may or may not have a toilet on it, and not get any sleep. So yes, you'll save on the accommodations, but you're going to show up the next morning at your destination feeling like a zombie. We basically just have decided in general that no, we don't want to bother with that. So we do tend to fly for most of the places we've been. We have done a couple of trains here in Romania where we currently are, and that's been fine, but they've been shorter days. But even that 6-hour day going from Bucharest to Sibiu, it's a decently long train ride, and it wasn't the most comfortable. Now, having said that, if we were flying that same, between those two cities, we'd probably spend about that much time in total anyways between the airport. You got to get there
don't
2
think it was
3
an
hours
option.
early.
I think
or
that's why we didn't.
No, it was an option. Yeah,
Oh,
City's
okay.
got an international airport.
I just
Um,
didn't think there was one going from Bucharest.
Oh, absolutely. There's
But
tons of flights. But in that case, it was significantly more expensive. We decided, yeah, you know what? Let's take a train. You know, but yeah. So take your pick. It basically is going to depend on your budget and your comfort level. You know what you want to do, but there's lots of options.
and as far as within, like, if we're in the city and how we get around, local transport, local
Buses, metro systems,
metros,
trains.
walking, a lot of walking. I think those are our top. Uh, yeah, taking local transport is a lot easier than you anticipate and a lot cheaper.
Yes, absolutely. By far cheaper. Easier can be debatable. We tend to choose our hotel and Airbnb locations to be fairly central, either close to a metro station or right smack in the middle of sometimes the middle of the city, historic town center, that sort of place where everything that you want to see is walkable. And if that doesn't work out, then there's always either taking a local taxi, which we avoid like the plague, or downloading an app such as Uber, Grab, Bolt.
I don't know.
We've
So
had like a
many.
dozen different ones on our phones, depending on which country and city
Yeah.
you're in. But yeah, using those ride sharing applications or ride hailing applications, I guess they are, is definitely the way to go. It's a lot cheaper than a local taxi, a little more reliable, and a lot more safe too, because of course that ride's being tracked. They can't just take off and kidnap you somewhere, because the app will actually say, if for example, we've had a couple times in Istanbul, a driver has to takes a detour somewhere, and because he detours from like the most direct route, the app actually will basically say, are you okay? Do you need us to call for help, kind of thing. So there's definitely some safety there too, especially if you're traveling solo. And on occasion, we've rented a motorbike or a car, depending on where we are and what our needs are. That's easily the most expensive way to do it, though. The car, especially car rentals, are pretty horrendously overpriced in a lot of places, especially if you want the insurance to make sure you don't get scammed for any damages.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that basically is it in a nutshell.
How has this experience changed your perspective on life?
That's an interesting question. I think it's just made me realize that there's just so much out there to see and do and experience, like so much more than I ever realized. Even after watching, since COVID happened and we've been watching travel vlogs, even after all that, like when you're in it, when you're doing it daily, you just realize the world is so big and we're so little and insignificant relatively, and there's just so much more to see and there's so much more to life. It just makes me glad that we were able to retire early and that we have this opportunity to do and see everything that we've done so far. And that's just really, really cool.
I think for me, it's that people who are so narrow-minded that are unwilling to travel are really missing out. I've learned a lot about religion, even just in general, or just compassion for different ways of life. Because it's easy to stay in your little bubble and think that you've got everything figured out. I promise you, you haven't. And if you can't get to the point of having compassion for even the poorest people in the world and like really putting yourself in those shoes, you're really doing yourself a disfavor, because it really does make you live differently.
So, with that being said, what skills do you think you've developed during our travels?
Oh, I've developed way better communication. I've developed, especially when it comes to ordering food. So that was always a big challenge for me because there's just so much restriction on being celiac. There's just so much barrier when it comes to like eating in a restaurant. And because we've had to do it so many times over and over and had to deal with so many different languages, I've learned how to be a little bit more direct and a little bit more forthcoming with like I what I need. And I found that people actually really appreciate it and are willing to accommodate it. But I guess I've grown in confidence.
I think for me, what I've learned is to not sweat the small stuff. Um, just letting stuff slide sometimes because you're on the road. There's only so much that you can do in certain situations. If something starts to go sideways, when we're on a travel day, there's pretty much nothing you can do about it. So you control what you can control and let the rest go. And having that mentality, I think, has definitely saved myself some grief on those days. Being able to just laugh it off and just be like, okay, it is what it is. So I think that is good. That's not something I've always been very good at. So I've definitely learned to do that a little bit better. And yeah, I think in general, just being more, I guess, flexible because, again, you kind of need to be. What is the best thing that you've eaten during our travels?
Ooh, that's so tough. Okay, I have to put this into like food is a challenge for me at the best of times. So I actually have like three top things because I cannot pick between them. The first is going to be food. Like there was this amazing dedicated gluten-free restaurant in Katakoi, Turkey, Damalfi, and the food was incredible. And we had pizza. I think it was pizza or pide.
No, it was pizza.
Yeah.
Pizziola or
Yeah.
no, sorry, pizzetta is what the
Pizzata.
Italian name was. Yeah.
And that was mind-blowingly good. As far as being celiac, that is definitely up there. And then we ate at a really fancy restaurant in Siem Reap.
Embassy.
We did not film it, but it was like 9 courses of amazing food, just one after another, and it was good. I can't even like define it. It was just amazing.
Yeah, it was basically 9 courses of 5-star gourmet dining, and definitely it was Cambodian food with an international twist on it, and it was just incredible. It was very, very good.
And then as far as like desserts, there in Romania and Bucharest, there was an amazing bakery there, and there was a caramel tart that blew my mind. It was so good. And for the first time in 18 years, I had a regular donut there. So that stands out. And also, one other thing when we were in Bali at the garage, I had a regular amazing croissant, which, if you're celiac, you'll understand.
So for me, food obviously not as big of a challenge as for Cory. So I've eaten just all sorts of incredible food on our journeys. Like so much incredible, delicious food. It's hard to even fathom. The meal at Embassy in Siem Reap, Cambodia, was definitely one of the top things. It was just an incredible dining experience. And if you have the opportunity, I highly recommend it. But to be perfectly honest, my favorite food that I've had on the entire trip, there's two things that stand out, and they both happen to be some of the cheapest things as well. First one was Hawker Chan in Singapore at the Chinatown um, food complex. And Hawker Chan um, was the first hawker stall in the world to be awarded the Michelin star back in, I can't remember what year it was. I can pop it on the screen if I remember to do that later. Um, but it was $6, and it was a plate of roast pork, barbecue duck, and soy sauce noodles, and it was incredible. So, so delicious. The other thing that stands out as I'm remembering back on all the food I've eaten is this little hole in the wall local restaurant in Kuta, Bali. And it was this little plate of babi guling, which is this roast pork with a little bit of rice, some spicy sambal on the side, like some stir-fried green beans, and a little bowl of like pork broth soup. And I think if I recall correctly, it was 15,000 Indonesian rupiah. It's about $1.35 Canadian. And my goodness, like the quality of food you can get for a dollar and change was mind blowing. So, so good, so delicious and tasty. So that is what stands out in my mind.
Is there anything that you wish you would have done differently?
Started doing this years ago.
I mean, there's not much you can do about that.
No, but that's what I wish. Realistically, no. I think we've, done about as good as we could have expected for our first year of full-time travel. Have we made some mistakes along the way? Absolutely. Are there things that, could have been improved upon? Sure. But you know what? That's life. And again, we talked about rolling with punches and just going with it, and that's one of those things. So no, I don't think there's anything I'd really have done any different this last year.
No. Life is pretty good for us. What did you find difficult when it came to shopping for some of the essentials that were needed as you went along?
Oh, interesting question. Contact solution has been surprisingly difficult. I wear contact lenses. I have a pair of glasses with me. I hate wearing them, so I never wear them. I wear contact lenses pretty much every day of the year. And at first, getting contact lens solution was pretty straightforward. I'd go to, sometimes the supermarkets would have them. Sometimes convenience stores would carry them. Pharmacies for sure would always have it. But starting in
Cambodia?
no, where was it? Vietnam. It was surprisingly hard to find. Had to go to a couple of different pharmacies before I found one that had any. And even then, a lot of times they only have the little travel size bottles, and they were crazy expensive relatively. So it took a while before I was able to find something more reasonably priced and the bigger bottles. And we had that same issue in Turkey as well, and a little bit here in Romania too. So contact lens solution, not as easy to find as I would have expected. Back home, you go to any grocery store, the pharmacy section, we'll just have tons of selection to choose from. Here, you go into a pharmacy, and if you're lucky, they'll have one brand available for you, hopefully the bigger bottle that you want. And if not, they'll just be like, no, we don't carry that, good luck. And you ask them, well, where can I find some? And they can't even tell you. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of times people must go to an optician for that kind of thing, but it just seems weird to me to need to go to a specialist like that to buy something that simple and that is a day-to-day essential.
Yeah, and the other thing that we found really interesting was just because you could buy it in one grocery store in, say, like Da Nang, Vietnam, it did not mean that you could buy it in another, in the same grocery store in a different town in that country. Uh, so a lot of times we would end up going to the grocery store. Say we started out in one city, and we're like, okay, well, this is what we like from this grocery store. We'd find that grocery store at a different city, and we'd be starting from scratch, basically, for like simple things like finding parsley or finding like pepper grinder or something like that. Like it is surprisingly inconsistent.
At least they were consistent in their inconsistency. So I guess there's, yeah, that. Anyways.
And I think we're at our final question.
Yeah. So what would be your top tip for someone who is considering traveling full time?
It's harder than you think, but it's simpler than you think. And I know that sounds very contradictory. The harder things are going to be changing your mind on a lot of things. What you know to be true today is not going to be true by the end of your year of travel. And the simpler things are if you can just blow off the little things, you're going to enjoy it.
So for me, I think my biggest piece of advice would be just to go out and do it. Before we started, we were, quite hesitant. We went back and forth a bunch, and at one point, we were like, "Are we crazy? Like, I can't believe we're doing this. Like, do we really want to sell our house and give up, the security and the comforts of home?" And after doing this for a full year, I can say without reservation that it has been one of the best things we've ever done for ourselves. Just the amount of personal growth we've experienced, the amount of just things we've seen and done and experienced in that time are definitely worth the headaches and the difficulties that you're going to experience in doing this. So yeah, that would be my advice. Just, make your plans, figure out how you're going to do it, figure out what you want to do. But at the end of the day, get out and go see the world, because there's a whole lot of stuff to do and see. And you know what? Our time is limited, so why waste it?
And for anybody who is celiac or gluten-free watching this, there's challenges, not going to lie, but they can all be worked through and you're going to be just fine.
So I think that is where we're going to leave this video. Thank you very much, you guys, for following us along on our journeys around the world. We really hope that there's some information here that's been useful. Maybe you're looking to do something similar. Maybe you just want to know more about some of these countries that we've been to, and hopefully we've been able to help along the way. But at any rate, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up to give us a like, and make sure you subscribe.
And join us in our other videos for more adventures. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.